Welcome back, everybody. My name is Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, and in this series, we are rebuilding popular user interfaces in SwiftUI. So far, we have rebuilt Spotify, we rebuilt Bumble, and now we're rebuilding Netflix. And this is the 6th video in the Netflix section. So if you missed the first 5, check those out first. They build up to this one. They're all available for free on this channel in this playlist. One thing I'm really loving about the Netflix user interface is the micro animations. And in this video, we're gonna make sure that we're really polishing those micro animations. Then we're gonna wrap up this screen, add in a little bit of routing, and then just talk about a high level how we have structured our code base, just so that you guys know how to approach this at a high level when you go and build your own apps. And I am noticing while I'm making these that the analytics show that a large percentage of you are actually not subscribed. You guys are watching this free educational content and you haven't hit the subscribe button yet. So if you want to stay updated or you want to just help me out, please hit that subscribe button. You're just one click away from putting a smile on my face. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a comment below if you're enjoying this playlist, if you're enjoying rebuilding Netflix, and leave a comment below with the apps that you guys want to build next. The ones that are the most popular, get the most requests, I will append to this playlist. We can build basically anything as long as it is not overly complicated or overly specific to a specific app. I want to build what you guys want to build, and hopefully this playlist has been helping you guys be able to build and actually implement some of these complex user interfaces in your own apps. That's all from me. Let's jump into Xcode and write some code. We are wrapping up the Netflix portion of this playlist. So far, we have built out the main screen in our app, and we are working on now the detail screen. So we've got the top section ready to rock and roll. And in this video, we're going to set up these buttons here. We're going to set up this grid view, and then we're going to wrap it up. So firstly, we're going to do these 3 buttons. This one's got a nice little micro animation. These little animations go a long way in building your apps. I would say if you have screens that are pretty stable, they're not going to change, it's time to start adding some micro animations. Users are going to notice it and start to love it. So we're going to do all 3 of these first, and we're going to make them all individual components just because there's little logic relating to each of the micro animations. Let's open our components here. I'm going to right click, create a new file. Let's call this one a my list button and click create. So the My List button has that micro animation that we just saw, and we're going to build it out quickly. So firstly, let's create the title. We'll say var is my list of type bool equals false. We need a state to manage whether or not it's added to the list or not. So we'll say variable is in my list of type bool. We'll set it equal to false to start. And we're going to set an action when the user clicks on this. We'll say on button pressed. Function that returns nothing. Let's wrap it in parentheses and make it optional. Set it equal to nil to start. Let's create a VStack here. At the top, we're going to have an image with a system name. Let's put the plus sign. And at the bottom, we're going to have text that says my list. Nice. It's going to be on a black background. So let's just mock that up. We'll do color.black, ignore safe area. Let's give this entire VStack a foreground style of Netflix white. And it's going to be a button. So we're going to add a tap gesture. So if I add a background color.blue, we can see that it's quite small. So let's add a padding here of 8 just to give it a little bit bigger tap gesture area. I'm going to add an on tap gesture after that, and we'll call on button press. Let's make this blue turn to black, opacity 001. Let's add some spacing to the VStack so that we can spread them out a little bit. Let's make the plus sign a font of title, so it's a little bit bigger. Let's make the text a font of caption. Let's make the actual text of a foreground style of Netflix light gray. And now when we tap it, we want to actually do something. And so what I'm going to do is create a preview version of the my button. Let's do a file private my list button preview of type view. Every view needs a body. It's a struct. Every view needs a body. Let's put in my list button, and let's hold it at state private var
is my list. Of type bool, set it equal to false for now. Pass that in, and on button pressed, let's just say is my list dot toggle. All right, so if it's on my list, we're going to put an image with a system name of checkmark. Otherwise, else we'll do an image with a system name of plus. I want both of these to have a font of title, so let's just quickly wrap this in a Z stack. And there we go. Let's put the preview on the screen here. And if I tap on it, hopefully it should work. And now we want to animate that switch. You guys can barely see it here, but while I'm tapping, the text underneath is actually moving. So let's see if I can animate this. If I tap it, see the text actually slightly moves a little bit. You can barely see it, but that's because each of these have a different size. So let's go background, color.red, and color.red. We can see that the background frame slightly changes between these icons, because these icons are different sizes, right? And we want the text to actually stay in the exact same place. So what we're going to do, instead of doing an if else, we're going to draw both of these on the screen. So let's put this one here. We'll put this one here. So now when I click between these two, you can't see it right now, but my list is not moving. It's the same size all the time because both of these are always drawn on the screen. What we're going to do is super simple opacity animation. We're going to say dot opacity. If is my list, check mark, otherwise don't show the check mark. And we'll do the reverse for the plus sign. So if my list, hide the plus sign, otherwise 1. Let's animate that. So I'm going to add a dot animation in here. Let's go bouncy on change of is my list. All right, the animation is working. And now I want to add a little bit of rotation just so it looks a little nicer. So I'm going to say here dot rotation effect. We'll add in an angle. And we'll say if it is my list, let's make it rotate 0 degrees so it's exactly upright. Otherwise, maybe 180. So I can see the check mark kind of rotate in now. And I want to do the same thing for the plus. So the plus also rotates. I'm just going to copy it and paste it here. And we want the reverse. So put 180 here and 0 here. And this looks better. But now it looks like they're rotating in different directions. One is rotating right, one's rotating left. I actually want them to rotate the same direction. So what we're going to do in the second one is just make it negative. So it goes to the reverse direction. And now we have this really nice micro animation on this button. Let's open up, create another button here, right click, new file, SwiftUI view. This is going to be our rate button. So let's call this the rate button. Let's click create. It's going to be this button here. So we're going to use a popover to show this little popover. We could also use a menu. We could also build a custom UI, but I like the popover UI, looks really nice here. So that's what we're going to use. So firstly, let's get the actual button on the screen. I'm going to zoom out here. I want to make the button more or less look exactly like the last button. So I'm just going to go to my list button and I'm just going to copy what we had. And I'm going to come back to my rate button and paste it in here. Let's remove all this animation. I'm going to put just one icon on the screen to remove the opacity here. This icon will be hand.thumbs up. It will say rate. We'll leave this as caption and gray. We're going to do the same padding stuff here. And then on tap gesture, we're going to do something else. So we'll just leave this off. We don't need this animation either. And now we have the rate button. Let's put our black background on the screen here. So Z stack colored black. Cool. And when we tap this, I want to show the popover. And that's actually a native SwiftUI component. I've covered popovers on my channel. It's in the SwiftUI Bootcamp video, probably somewhere around number 70. To use a popover, all we need to do is add a modifier called .popover. And we'll use the isPresented values. We need a Boolean for isPresented. We'll say at state popover. Of type bool, set it equal to false to start. Let's bind to the show popover. The attachment anchor, I'm just going to use the default, so we'll delete that. And same thing for the arrow edge, we're just going to use the default value, so I'll delete that as well. The content in the popover, for right now, let's just put text. It says hi. Let's see if it works. On tap gesture, we'll call show popover.toggle. And it shows the popover. The default popover behavior is a sheet. Presentation compact. adaptation, and we'll call it .popover. So now it's just an actual popover. The direction of the popover will be automatic based on the UI of the screen. Let's edit the popover here. Let's create a Z stack. On the background of the Z stack, I'm going to make it a color.netflix dark gray. Ignore safe area. And then we're going to put some buttons on the screen here. So the button is going to look like a V stack with some spacing of 8. At the top, we'll have an image. We'll just use the system name for now. Let's go heart.fill just for a second, and we'll put some text below it. And let's just put text. All right, so when I click this, something should open. We got the text here. Let's change out the icon to make it a little bigger. Font title 2. Let's change out the font. Let's call it font.caption. I want this to be clickable. Let's make this white, foreground style of white, Netflix white. Let's give it a background of color.blue so that we can see it for a second. I want to make this clickable. So before the background, we're going to add again another padding 4. A little bit more clickable now. And then we'll add the background. We'll actually make it black, opacity 001. And when we tap on one of these, I want to do something. So there's going to be a tap gesture as well. Sorry, 0.001. I want to add 3 different buttons. So I'm going to cut this and make this a function. So let's go private func. Let's call this the rate button and return some view. Paste it in. And the rate button, it needs to have an icon as well as some text. We'll put here, let's do H stack space 12, and we'll just put 3 rate buttons for now. 1, 2, 3. See what it looks like. Beautiful. 3 rate buttons. Now let's add some logic to actually get the data for these 3 buttons. I might change this over time. We might add buttons. We might remove buttons. We might change the formatting. We might want to inject or download the buttons from the server. So what we're going to do is create an enum for these buttons rather than hard coding the 3 buttons. Let's come up here. I'm going to create a quick little enum. Let's call this the rate option. And let's open the brackets. There will be 3 cases. We'll have the dislike button, we'll have a like button, and we'll have a love button. And each of those buttons is going to have text and an icon. So let's come in here. We'll create a variable called title of type string. Switch on self. If self is equal to dislike, we will return the text not for me. This is just the text that Netflix actually has. If it is like, we will return I like this. And if it's love, we will return love this with an exclamation mark. I'm going to copy and do another one for the icon name. Each of these will have an icon. So the dislike icon is going to be hand.thumbs down idea. The like is going to be hand.thumbs up. And then we don't have a love icon, not the Netflix one at least. So we're just going to call here a bolt.heart. So it looks like a fun heart. We're going to pass in our rate options here. So for each button, let's pass in an option. That is a rate option. And let's put on the screen the option.icon name and the option.title. So when I create a rate button, it's going to be, we're going to have to create 3 of these. Sorry, these should be the lowercase rate button. We shouldn't rename it the same as our rate button here. Let's call this the lowercase. So let's make sure we're using the lowercase rate button here. The option, we're going to do dislike. And then I'm just going to copy and paste that twice. Like and love. Make sure that works. Click on it. Not for me. Like and love looks good. Let's actually loop on them, because if we want to add more or remove some, I don't want to have to actually add in and copy and paste a bunch of these every time. So what we're going to do is actually make the rate option, let's conform to string so it has a raw value, and make it case iterable so we can loop on it. So now that we can loop on the rate options, we can do a for each. We'll loop on the rate option dot all cases because we just made a case iterable. We gave it a raw value of string, so we can loop on the ID referencing the raw value of self. This will be each option in. And then we can just put this here and we'll pass in the option. Delete all of these. When I click on one of these, I want to actually hide the popover. So when I tap on one of these, I'm going to add a .show popover equals false. Cool. Let's add a little bit of padding around the outside of this. So on the H stack here, I'm going to add padding. Let's go horizontal 16. Let's go padding vertical 8. Click on one, it disappears. And finally, I want to actually send the one that I click on. So if I click on one of these buttons, I want to send that back to my screen. So if I'm calling this from the detail screen, I want to know which one the user tapped. So let's pass in here a function called onRatingSelected. It'll be a function that returns nothing or void. Let's wrap it in parentheses, make it optional, set it equal to nil. And when I trigger this function, I want to be able to pass back a rate option. So in here, in addition to hiding the popover, I'm going to call onRatingSelected, and I'll pass in the option. We're going to do one more button, that is the share button, and we're going to keep it simple. So let's right click a new file, SwiftUI view share button, click create. In here, I'm going to move fast. We're going to pass in a URL, var URL of type string, and I'm going to set it equal to just a URL of my website for now, https://www.swiftful-thinking.com. If you've never checked out our website, definitely go check it out. All the courses are listed there with some additional information as well. What we're going to do is create on the screen a share link. This is a native SwiftUI-esque way of creating a share sheet. It is not as reusable as some of the other share sheets, depending on what you actually want to send, but this works great if you just have a URL. Oftentimes in apps, I would not use this because we want to really customize the share sheet, but I'm going to try to do this fast. So we're just going to go with the item here with the URL. And actually, I want the label here. So the label gives me the ability to customize the label completely. So let's enter that one. So the URL will be the URL from a string. We'll pass in the URL. We'll force unwrap it for 1 second. And then here we'll add in the label. I want the label to be the same button as the other two buttons. So I'm just going to go back to my rating. I'm just going to copy this button here, paste it in my share, in my label here. We don't actually have a tap gesture, so I'll delete that. All right, so let's give it a black background here. We'll go Z stack, color black, ignore safe area. Let's click it, and the sheet's beautiful. Before we wrap this up here, I don't like that this is force unwrapping. Like, God forbid I put in a bad URL. It might actually crash my application. I guess that actually worked, but if we can't get the URL, I don't want to show the button at all. So I'm actually going to change the force unwrap here to be an if let URL equals URL from the string of URL string. And if we get one, we will then wrap this, put this on the screen. So pass in the URL here. So now if we don't have a URL, it just won't render. So this has actually now become a view builder. If you're using an old version of Swift, you might actually have to mark this as @view builder. But I think in the current version of Swift, we don't need to add this tag manually. I'll leave it there just in case. And we got our rate button and it's working. Let's wrap up this details view now. So we're going to go back to our Netflix movie details view. We're going to come down underneath the details product view. Let's add an H stack. Let's go spacing of 2. So it's a lot of space between these. Let's add in the My List button. And we need a Boolean for this. So I'm going to come up here and just do @state private var is my list of type bool equals false. Let's pass that in. On the button press, we're going to say is my list.toggle. Next to that, we're going to add in our rate button. On rating selected, this will be selection. We're not going to do anything with it, but here we would do something with selection. If we want to update our database or do something that now that the user clicked love it. And on the right of that, we're going to add the share button as well. We'll use the default URL, so we don't need to add one. This entire VStack here, let's align it, alignment leading, so that it's on the left edge. And then I want to push it off of the left edge so it's not fully aligned. So we're just going to add a little bit of padding on the H stack here. We'll go padding dot leading 32 as well. So it's pushed in a little bit. Let's wrap this up, which is the little grid down at the bottom here. I'm going to add a VStack alignment to the left edge as well. I'm going to add text that just says more like this. Give it a font of headline. Give this whole thing a foreground style of Netflix white. We're going to add a quick little grid down here. So we don't have a bunch of other products on this screen, but we can easily load some up. So I'm just going to create up here and at state var, we'll say products type array of product, set it equal to a blank array. And then just like we did in the Netflix home view, where we downloaded a bunch of products, I'm going to copy the get data function, come back to this view. At the bottom, let's find the bottom. So at the Z stack at the bottom, we're going to add a task. And then we're going to create a function down here. This will be if the products is empty. And we're just going to set the self.product equal to get products. We don't need the current user. We don't need any of this. Let's here call await get products or get data. While we're at it, we'll call toolbar visibility is hidden for the nav bar because we're using custom ones here. I actually made a bug. The rate button doesn't look right here. The second rate button. Sorry, some of you guys probably noticed it already. The share button should be paper plane. Paper plane. And it should say share. My mistake, guys. It's been a lot of code the last couple days. Last but not least, we want to put the products on the screen. So we're going to add here a lazy V grid. I'm going to use the lazy V grid this time just so we get some use with the actual grids, not the non-lazy one that we used earlier in this series. Lazy V grid, the columns. We're going to add here an array of columns. We're going to repeat a grid item because all the columns are going to be the same. So we're going to have grid item here and we're going to do dot flexible. We don't need the minimum and maximum. And let's get maybe 3 columns on the screen here. The alignment, we will keep center. The spacing, we're going to put to 8. And we don't need any pin views. And here's our content. I want to add a little bit of spacing in between each of these. So these grids also have a spacing of 8. And then finally, let's put on the screen our for each of the products. And this will be each product in. We're going to put a Netflix movie cell. So the same cells that we had earlier. We'll use the default height and width. Let's triple click Control M, and then this is going to be the product.first_image or first image. We'll go product.title. Is recently added. We'll go product.isRecentlyAdded. We'll go product.recentlyAdded. And then top 10, we're just going to put nil for this screen. We got our grid of products on the screen, and it's looking pretty good. This button should be working. The rate button should be working. The share button should be working. And we are rocking and rolling. Let's clean up this screen by just separating out some of our logic here. So we got the scroll view here. I'm going to make this we'll call this the details product section. I'm going to come down here. Private var details product section. Some view. Paste that in. Move this up here. Let's call this the buttons section. Just keep it generic. Private var buttons section of type some view. Paste that in. And then let's put that back on the screen, the buttons section. And then this will be our grid view at the bottom. So we're just going to say here, the private var products grid section, some view. Paste that in as well. Products grid section. Let's put that back up here. I am starting to love how easy this is now to read. I can tell exactly what's going on here. And last but not least, let's wrap up this video by adding some routing logic for this app. So if I am on the home screen, I want to be able to click on one of these and go to this detail screen. So let's just jump back to our code base here. Firstly, we have our content view. I'm going to copy and add another one that just says open Netflix. Do full screen cover, we'll call the Netflix home screen. On the Netflix home view, let's bring in our router at environment /.router var router. You can also import Swiftful routing while we're at it. For the router, if I click on for you, I'm just going to dismiss this screen just so it goes back to that content view. That's not actually how the app works, obviously. But on this header for you, let's just add a quick on tap gesture router.dismiss screen. And if I click on any of these cells, I want to go to the next screen. So let's create a private function for that. And we'll say on product pressed, pass in the product of type product. and we'll call router.showScreen. And we want to show this screen as a sheet, so it pops over and the user has that drag gesture. We don't need this router here, and we're just going to say Netflix movie details view. We'll pass in a product. All right, so on this hero cell now, let's go to the hero cell. Where is our scroll view layer? Inside the scroll view layer should be a hero cell. Inside this hero cell, we already have actions. So on background press, we'll just pass in the product. On play press, we'll do the same thing. On my list press, we'll just ignore it for now. Make sure that works. So we need to put our preview in a router. Let's go router view. Now it should work. And now when we click on these cells, we want the same thing. So on the Netflix movie cell, I'll add an on tap gesture. Let's call on product pressed, pass in the product, see if it works. Lastly, this screen, let's go click this. So if I'll copy the environment, let's go Netflix movie details view, pass in our environment. Where's our X mark? Let's look for our header. Our header has an action for X mark pressed already. Let's just call router.dismiss screen. And if I click on one of these grid items down here, let's just show another sheet. So the same logic we had in our home view where we show the sheet, we just wrote on product pressed. I'm just going to copy that, paste it in here, and go down to my grid section, and we'll just on tap gesture, we'll call on product pressed, show the product. So again, from here, we should be able to push to the next screen. Let's wrap it in a router view so that the router is working. We should import Swiftful routing, router view. Again, you guys don't have to use Swiftful routing. I'm just doing it to move fast because this series is about the UI layer. Click one of these and another sheet appears. Build and run to the simulator and see what we have built. I'm going to open up Netflix and we have our beautiful Netflix home screen. I love how the categories, we can animate when we click on the categories. We animate them off as we scroll. We animate on the navigation bar as we scroll up. It just looks so seamless. Even the background color. Most users don't even notice this, but it's just a beautiful user experience. I think that looks really nice. I like that we have the top 10 row. We have a lot of rows that are not top 10. Some of these cells have recently added flags in them. This is very much like a real world scenario where we have different types of data. Some of them have Booleans for showing it different styles. If I click on one of these, it should hopefully open up the details view. It's a sheet, which is nice. So the user can scroll on it. The X mark should dismiss that sheet as well. We got the play button, which doesn't do anything, and the download button. We got micro animations built. We got rate buttons built. I really like this popover UI. It seems pretty seamless. The share button works. And we got a grid down here of more things like this. And we added a little bit of logic so that if we click this, it'll further pop up another sheet. So now we have this like infinite view here where users can really just start to see our entire catalogs. Awesome. That is it for Netflix. I hope you all enjoyed the last couple videos. This looks really good to me. I'm sure the Netflix code base is quite different from our code base, probably much more complex, but for just a couple hours of work, I think we got pretty close. And I think we had a lot of really real world use case here of like, how do I build a complex screen with really good micro animations? And we spent a lot of time really making sure that these animations don't just work, but they work exactly pixel perfect. Like we could have built a lot of these things so that the scroll views don't actually push through the edges of the device, but we did. We spent that time. And I think those tiny little tweaks, like the animation here of coming in from the left side, these tiny micro animations really go a long way in making your app not just a usable product, but a beautiful product. The last thing I'll note here is, again, we strategically made reusable components as we built out this view. So if I wanted to change my app architecture, or I wanted to use MVVM or TCA or something like that, changing from this basic state to any architecture should not be difficult. All we need to do is basically take our data and move this section of the data into a view model. And then we just reference the data in the view model, and we can put some of these functions like get data, we would call viewModel.getData. And this again is one of the reasons why I think people get really stuck on like, which architecture should I use? where the reality is if you're building totally reusable views and components, it doesn't matter which architecture you're going to use. And it also makes it really easy to just refactor the architecture layers if you need to. So that's why we built this with core views and then a bunch of reusable components. And all of the reusable components have no dependencies. We are just passing in strings and booleans and simple pieces of data. We're even passing in actions, but we're not coupling them to specific dependencies, specific data services, specific fetch requests, and things like that. So far in this course, we have built Spotify, we have built Bumble, and we have built Netflix. Hope you guys are enjoying this course. If you have a request of the next app that we should build, leave a comment below. I am super excited to build whatever you guys want me to build, as long as it is not too crazy or too difficult, and we can do it in a couple hours of work. Thank you guys for watching. As always, my name is Nick. This is Swiftful Thinking, and I'll see you in the next video.